Good afternoon, I'm Atik Rumi, bringing you the news on Gold FM.
The news headlines on Gold FM.
In your headlines, 208 Iranian personnel brought to Colombo port. Iran ready for a US ground invasion, but Trump says such move a waste of time. Electricity Act implementation from Monday. Parliament debates substandard coal import claims. In your sports news, India books T20 final spot for a second consecutive time.
The top story on Gold FM.
Authorities safely transported 204 crew members from the Iranian vessel Iris Bushehr to Colombo port this morning before transferring them to the Valisara naval base for medical examinations. The operation follows a formal request from Iran on Wednesday for the 107-meter vessel to enter Sri Lankan waters amid escalating Middle East conflict involving Israel and the United States. Navy spokesperson Captain Buddhika Sampath confirms the group includes 48 senior sailors, 23 sailors, 84 cadets and 84 other officers. President Anura Kumara Dissanayake announced plans to move the Iris Bushehr to Trincomalee port, noting the vessel previously conducted an official visit to Colombo in February 2024. Tragedy struck the Iranian Navy earlier as a torpedo strike from an American submarine destroyed the Iris Dana approximately 90 nautical miles off the coast of Galle, resulting in 84 fatalities. The director of the Galle National Hospital confirms the completion of post-mortem examinations for all victims. Due to limited morgue capacity, 2 refrigerated containers, one provided by the government and another funded by public donations, now house the remains. Hospital officials report that 32 survivors currently receive treatment, with one individual in critical condition while the others remain stable. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi once again commented on the vessel sunk by the US. In an interview with foreign media, he termed the US's act as a war crime.
That was a training ship, which was invited by the Indian Navy to take part in an exercise, and they went there as their guests, and they did participate in that exercise, and they were in their way back home, and the ship was unarmed. So attacking unarmed ship full of training officers and sailors is a war crime, I have to say.
However, if the Middle tensions escalate to the Indian Ocean region, Indian national security analyst Nitin Gokhale believes that Sri Lanka will be affected the most.
If this confrontation or conflict comes to its doorsteps and to the sea lines of communication or the sea lanes for transit and trade, which goes through Indian Ocean, then Sri Lanka suffers the most, because port calls by merchant ships to Sri Lanka, and then the Colombo port as a transshipment port for countries around Sri Lanka, particularly India, where 60% of India's traffic, the goods traffic, is transshipped at Colombo port, which brings in a lot of revenue to Sri Lanka, which might get affected. Insurance companies might not just hike the rates of insurance for ships coming to Colombo, which will have disastrous economic effect on Sri Lanka itself.
We will bring you the updates on the Middle East war in our international news segment.
This is the local news on Gold FM.
Sri Lankan Airlines continues the cancellation of flights today amid rising regional instability. Director General of Civil Aviation, Captain Damindu Rambukwala, confirms 6 services to Sharjah, Muscat and Zayed remain operational despite the disruption. Data indicates a total of 288 Middle Eastern flight cancellations since the 28th of February due to the ongoing security situation. Meanwhile, the Israeli government issued urgent safety guidelines for foreign workers following the escalation of regional hostilities. Sri Lanka's ambassador to Israel, Nimal Bandara, advised all residents to strictly adhere to official protocols during air raid sirens and emergency warnings. Workers are urged to prepare emergency kits containing essential supplies, including water, medical records and mobile chargers, as security conditions remain volatile. Energy Minister Kumara Jayakodi issued an extraordinary Gazette notification to establish 6 successor companies for the functions and duties of the Ceylon Electricity Board. The directive, effective from the 9th of March, mandates the creation of these entities to oversee power generation, transmission, distribution and system operations. Under the Sri Lanka Electricity Act No. 36 of 2024, the majority of provisions come into force on that date, officially initiating the restructuring process of the state utility. Meanwhile, COPE Chairman MP Dr. Nishantha Samaravira leads a delegation on an observation tour of the Norochule Lakvijaya power plant this morning. The visit follows significant controversy regarding the quality of coal imported for the facility. The matter was also debated in Parliament today, and views were expressed by parliamentarians Nalin Bandara and Leader of the House Bimal Ratnayaka. In the interest of clarity, we refrained from dubbing their remarks.
පොදුයාර පාරක සභාවේ සභාපතිවරයා ඔහුගේ පෞද්ගලික අභිමතය අනුව අපි දැක්ක ඊයේ ගල්ලංගුරු වංචාව පිළිබඳව සුද්ධ කරනවා මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේදී ඊයේද පෙරේදද. එතකොට අද එතුමා නොරොච්චෝලට ගිහිල්ලා තියෙනවා ඒ සුද්ධ කරන වැඩේ දෙවෙනි අදියරේ කරන්න. දැන් ඊයේ නොරොච්චෝලේ ගල්ලංගුරු අබරණ යන්ත්‍ර දෙකක් කැඩලා තිබුණා. අර ආණ්ඩුවට බොරු කියන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි යන්ත්‍ර සූත්‍ර වලට බොරු කරන්න බෑ. ඒ ගාපු බාල ගල්ලංගුරු ඉඳලා දැන් එක පැත්තකින් දුම් යනවා ෆ්ලයි ඇෂ් යනවා. ඒක බලාගාරයක. ඒ නිසා මේ පොදු ව්‍යාපාර කාර්ක සභාවේ සභාපති තියන්නේ ඩෝබි වැඩේ කරන්න නෙමෙයි ඒ ගල්ලංගුරු පිළිබඳව නිවැරදි පරීක්ෂණයක් කරන්න ඒකට සහයෝගය දෙන්න.
මන්ත්‍රීතුමා මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ මන්ත්‍රීයට දාලා තමයි මේ චෝදනා ඉදිරිපත් කරන්නේ. එතුමාට එහෙම බලයක් නැහැ. ඒ නිසා මම ඔබතුමාගෙන් ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා ඒ පිළිබඳව සහභාගීලා කටයුතු කරන්න කියලා. කට තිබුණු පළියට හැම වෙලාවෙම එක එක වාචාල කතා කියන්න පුරුදු වෙන්න එපා. පොදු ව්‍යාපාර කාරක සභාවේ සභාපතිවරයාත් වෙනත් ඕරම කාරක සභාවක සභාපතිවරුන්ටත් පාර්ලිමේන්තු මන්ත්‍රීවරු ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ දේවල් කතා කරනවා. ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ තමයි වගකීම තිබෙන්නේ. යා බොරුවක් කිව්වොත් ඒක යාට බලපාවි. තමුන්නාසලාගේ දේශපාලන වමනාට තමුන්නාස දේශපාලනය කරන මන්ත්‍රීවරුන්ගේ අයිතිවාසිකම් නැති කරන ඔබතුමාට බලයක් නැහැ.
Now for some news in brief.
Two people died and 13 were hospitalized after a boat which set out from Guru Nagar Jetty in Jaffna capsized.
The business news on Gold FM.
First Capital Holdings warns the Sri Lankan rupee could depreciate by 5% this year as geopolitical tensions in the Middle East drive investors towards safe haven assets. The US dollar index climbed to 99.2 following the escalation, leaving the local currency vulnerable to increased external pressure and a widening current account deficit. While the rupee opened weaker before settling at 309.24 against the greenback, analysts suggest the drop could exceed initial projections if regional instability persists. Rising freight and insurance costs are expected to further strain the balance of trade, placing the country's export sector at high risk. Registered accounts at Central Depository Systems Limited exceeded 1 million as the institution prepares for its 35th anniversary this September. The breakthrough follows a total digitalization drive launched in 2020, which eliminated physical paperwork and introduced mobile apps for retail investors nationwide. Established in 1991 as the first depository in South Asia, the firm now digitizes 97% of listed equity and 100% of corporate debt.
International news on Gold FM.
Iranian officials signal readiness for a potential ground invasion by American forces as regional hostilities intensify. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, in an interview, challenged Washington to attempt a terrestrial assault, stating that Tehran remains prepared for a direct military confrontation.
Are you afraid of a U.S. invasion in your country?
No, we are waiting for them.
You are waiting for the U.S. military to invade the ground troops?
Yes, because we are confident that we can confront them, and that would be a big disaster for them.
However, US President Donald Trump responds to these reports by suggesting that while Iranian leadership seeks negotiations, it is now too late for such discussions. He further indicates no immediate necessity for a ground campaign, describing current air and naval operations as sufficient to neutralize Iranian capabilities. Against this backdrop, Professor of International Affairs and Middle East Studies at Johns Hopkins University, Wali Nasser, explained what he believes is the strategy of the United States and Iran in this war.
The difference in strategy for the U.S. and Israel, particularly for the U.S., is that this is a boxing match. They want to knock Iran out in first round or second round. The biggest impact comes day one. Kill the supreme leader, kill military commanders, hit as many missile launchers as you can, hit all the targets. Iran is trying to fight a 15-round bout. And he calculates the longer this goes on, the more Israel and the U.S. would be exhausted. I mean, one of their calculations is that they are using their missiles and drones in a way that would deplete the U.S. and Israel, and particularly the Gulf's air defense systems. And I think with the Gulf, they are already running out of interceptors, and they have to compete with Israel and U.S. itself about being resupplied, and there isn't enough resupply. And the Pentagon is worried that the longer the war goes on, it's going to create global shortages for THAAD missiles and interceptors. And so this is a very sort of a calculated strategy by Iran. The Gulf states are between a stone and a hard place.
The U.S. military said it has sunk over 30 Iranian ships so far during the U.S. and Israel's war against Iran, including an Iranian drone ship that is on fire. U.S. Admiral Brad Cooper, who leads U.S. forces in the Middle East as the head of Central Command, told reporters that ballistic missile attacks by Iran have decreased by 90% since the first day of the war. Meanwhile, investigations continue into a devastating strike on the Shajar-e Tayyibeh girls' school in Minab, which resulted in at least 165 civilian deaths. U.S. intelligence reports suggest American involvement in the incident, which occurred during precision strikes against an adjacent military complex. While the Pentagon maintains that civilian infrastructure is never a target, internal military sources describe the strike as likely perpetrated by U.S. forces. In a significant diplomatic shift, the U.S. Treasury Department issued a temporary 30-day waiver to India for the purchase of Russian oil currently stranded at sea. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent describes the move as a stopgap measure to stabilize global energy markets and alleviate pressure caused by Iranian attempts to disrupt supply lines. Simultaneously, China enters discussions with Tehran to secure safe passage for crude oil and liquefied natural gas shipments through the Strait of Hormuz. Regional instability spreads as Bahrain and Qatar maintain airspace closures, and Kuwait reports damage from drone strikes on its soil. Commercial airlines continue the cancellation of hundreds of flights, while global oil prices surge amid the total closure of the Bab el-Mandeb and Hormuz Straits.
Entertainment news on Gold FM.
Sir Patrick Stewart, best known for his roles as Captain Jean-Luc Picard in Star Trek and Professor Charles Xavier in the X-Men films, is releasing an audiobook in which he performs all 154 of William Shakespeare's sonnets. Titled Patrick Stewart Performs the Complete Sonnets of William Shakespeare, the audiobook goes on sale on the 7th of April. 85-year-old Stewart spent over 40 years with the Royal Shakespeare Company and first revisited the sonnets during the COVID pandemic when he shared video recordings online.
Sports news on Gold FM.
Defending champions India advanced to the T20 World Cup final following a narrow 7-run victory over England at Mumbai's Wankhede Stadium. Sanju Samson leads the charge with a blistering 89 off 42 balls, guiding the hosts to a record-breaking total of 253 for 7. Despite a sensational century from England's Jacob Bethel, disciplined death bowling from Jasprit Bumrah and Hardik Pandya ensures the win. This victory marks India's second consecutive final appearance as they prepare to face New Zealand in Ahmedabad this Sunday. That's it for the news. I'm Atik Rumi. Have a great day.